Hi, BookTube, and welcome to my weekly wrap-up of two short novels. Last year in my annual wrap-up I said I wanted to try and read a slightly greater proportion of non-UK, non-US novels, and I think I'd read 8 so far this year, and none of them have been not either UK or US, but this week I've had two. The Ice Palace by Norwegian writer Tarjei Vesaas. Again, apologies, I'm sure that's pronounced wrong. The other is by Argentinian writer Ariana Harwicz, Die My Love. So I read this one first, so I'm going to start with this. And I have read, as I'm sure a lot of you have read, plenty of books about deracinated characters. So they are alienated from the rest of humanity, they're alienated from loved ones and family, they're alienated from themselves, they're alienated from their body, their own bodies. And I kind of think it's hard to bring something new to that. And in this case, is the character, is she mentally ill? Is she just, genuinely outside and other from normal humanity? In this case, about marriage and family that she feels very alienated from and unable to participate in on the terms in which one is supposed to. Or is it, just arrested development? It's a character you just want to shake and go, no, come on, you're being self-indulgent. Now, I don't have an answer to that. But the problem I had with this book is that I didn't feel that it offered any new insight on this type of human character. So in the case of Clarice Lispecter, and this is very much in the territory of that, Lispecter, I think, is much more metaphysical about it. Lispecter's sort of introspection in her characters, I think offers a lot more. In the case of an author like Hubert Selby Jr., who you might not associate with this kind of thing, but actually I think he absolutely is. But the difference with him is he cites and locates his deracinated characters very much in the cause of their alienation. Is he provides societal and political context for it, which is why I say sometimes you read this and you just think this is self-indulgent. The character's self-indulgent. She's so sort of self-obsessed and subjective. Can't really reach out and connect with others. So I didn't really get, there's nothing wrong with this book, and some of the writing is very good. It has a curious thing of every so often it will jolt you, it will startle you with an image or a turn of phrase. But the problem is, in order for that to work, if the whole book was at that pitch, it would leave you concussed or numb. So obviously it doesn't. So the problem is, for every startling, jolting phrase you get, it's sort of in the middle of a load of just stuff, fairly uninspiring stuff about feeling alienated, and I don't think there's much more I can say about this really. I gave it 3 stars because it is well written. It was nominated for the International Booker long list last year, and I can see why. It's well written. But like I say, it's kind of ten a penny, and the writing is good, but not extraordinary to elevate it. Given that I think there's not much at its heart, I think it's a bit empty, a bit soulless. It's actually soulless. It almost reads like an intellectual and a poetic exercise rather than something done with sort of soul. And I just want to read a bit on the back, which is not obviously the author's fault. So this is sort of the blurb. The language of Die My Love cuts like a scalpel, even as it attains a kind of cinematic splendour, evoking the likes of John Cassavetes, Quentin Tarantino and John Ford. Now, I'm not a movie buff, but I don't see what John Cassavetes, Quentin Tarantino and John Ford have in common at all. You probably couldn't have put together 3 more disparate sort of film directors. So, that sort of put the tin lid on it, really. Okay, and on to the Ice Palace. An altogether different kettle of fish. I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. So it starts off with 2 11-year-old girls at school, and one of them is a recent import to the village because she has become an orphan, so she's moved out to stay with her auntie, who happens to live in this village. And when she attends school, she keeps herself to herself. She doesn't join in the sort of the group. She makes herself an outsider, but she's not. People sort of think that she's obviously bright. People think that she's nice. She seems perfectly pleasant, but she just won't join in. And this is a particularly sort of bugbear to the person who everyone sort of congregates around, the popular girl in class who's called Sis, and the other character, the loner, is called Anne. And Sis kind of wants to get to know her, but can't sort of penetrate this chasm that Un puts around, between herself and other people. And then one day, Un invites her back to her place, and they have this really intense evening, which makes Sis tingle. Is it sexual? Is it pre-sexual? I don't know. It's sort of left deliberately vague, I think. And it almost reads like the names Sis and Un for me sort of resonated with clove and ham in a Beckett play. It's all they're fumbling language, trying to sort of plot the dimensions of each other, and lots of sort of non sequiturs, or they misjudge the question and things like that. Reminded me very much of Beckett. This is only in chapter 1, don't forget. And this is the first time they've been together, and Un looks as though she's going to reveal some terrible secret to Sis, and Sis is on tenterhooks. And then Un pulls back and sort of says, "No, it's a bit too soon, but I will tell you. Just hang on. We're going to become good friends." And that's into chapter 1. And chapter 2, the next morning, Un wakes up, and she so sort of had such a profound sort of effect on her. She decides that she's going to play truant from school. And she's going to visit what's called the Ice Palace, which is basically in the depths of winter in Norway, where there's a waterfall. There's this sort of beautiful ice architectural structure that has formed in the way that sort of water has fallen and settled and frozen in place. So not unlike stalactites and stalagmites in that sort of the sort of sharp daggers that sort of come up, and no one knows that she's gone there. And, we presume, and I don't think this is a spoiler, we presume that she dies there. It's described, her experiences are in there, but it's never said specifically that she dies. But it looks, the way things unfold is that she is going to die there. She's going to freeze to death. And then the chunk of the book is obviously that, they said the village, sets out to try and find her, and the effect on Sis, who's left, bereft really. And I think that's what this book is about. I've seen it described where they say the Ice Palace itself, the structure itself, is a character, or nature is a character. And I don't see it like that at all. I see it more as a metaphor, that this is a book about void, about, a hole. It's a sort of double whammy for Sis, because on the one hand she's lost a friend, and the village has lost a young child, although she was to some extent an outsider. But also Sis is left in limbo, because she was on the point of having this great secret revealed to her. So she'd been entrusted with the knowledge there was a secret, but she never found out what it was. And she sort of swears undying loyalty to the memory of Anne until Anne's body is found. No one will say that she's dead. And then Sis becomes like Anne and sort of keeps herself away from everybody else at school and becomes the loner, because she's sort of pledged her troth to Anne, and this great secret that we don't know what it is. Even Sis doesn't know what it is. So I think it's about void, and I say it's about void because the fantastic descriptions and the atmospheric descriptions of the architecture of the ice, the different types of water. So you have the lake's frozen over, but there's obviously water underneath it, because the surface level water freezes, but underneath it's at 4 degrees centigrade, so that it doesn't freeze solid all the way through. And then you've got things like where the waterfall hits, and you have all the sort of foam of the sort of explosive molecules of water hitting the ground from great height, forms foam, so that doesn't freeze over, or where it does, it freezes as bubbles, or the stalactite type of things where you get little dribble flow. So it's not constant momentum of a waterfall which doesn't freeze over, but where it sort of dribbles and falls off edges, there it does. So there's a fantastic description of ice and water, reminding me very much of Anna Kavan's short story Ice, which everyone should go and read, by the way. It's fantastic. But it's not a character to my mind. It's a metaphor for void, for all the different things trapped in the water but will be released when the ice, sorry, trapped in the ice, which will be released when the ice melts. And the last chapter is called the palace melts or disappears or whatever it is. So I loved all the writing here about the ice palace. It's a bit more satisfying than sort of Sis trying to wrestle with all the emotions that an 11-year-old girl sort of dimly perceives but can't really understand. So again, this notion of void, and I don't think it quite held together as a read, because there's so many unanswered questions and questions that Sis poses or questions she asks and doesn't get answers. But the physical description and the three-dimensionality of the metaphor of the ice palace itself are just tremendous, and I really enjoyed this. So Elizabeth at Bookish North, I'm ready to talk about the translation, because I'm intrigued to say, because you said you read it in the Norwegian original and then you've read it in English, and you found that the English translation didn't quite do the justice of the Norwegian original. And I'm interested to know why, because obviously I'm reading as an English person, with no chance of being able to read it in the Norwegian original. But for me the language worked because it was a lot of sort of non sequiturs or questions that were framed and then sort of broken off before they could be answered, all that sort of thing. I thought that came over very strongly in the book, in the translation. So I don't know if it's something else you were referring to, particularly about the difference in the two translations, but let's talk. Okay, so that's it for this week. I start tomorrow Monday with a buddy read with Celia, and we're doing Clarice Lispecter's book The Passion According to GH. So till next time, thanks very much.